Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we'll learn how to automate our current Docker workflow with Docker Compose. Currently, we have to start up the Redis container first, and then start up the app container and link it to the Redis container. This manual approach works well for small applications, but it would get rather impractical when the number of containers and the number of container links grow. What if our application have more than 20 components and they're all running inside containers? It would become very complicated to start and link all the containers. Here is where Docker Compose comes in handy. Docker Compose is a tool for defining and running multiple container Docker applications. So with Docker Compose, we can define all the containers in a single file called Docker Compose YAML file. We can run a single command to start up all the containers. Here is what the Docker Compose YAML file looks like. You can find this web page by Googling Docker Compose. If you installed Docker using the Docker toolbox, you should already have Docker Compose installed. If not, you can always follow the installation guide at this Docker Compose web page to install Docker Compose. You can verify if Docker Compose is already installed by running Docker Compose version command. See, it displays the current Docker Compose version. Now, it is time to write the Docker Compose YAML file for our application. Just create a docker-compose.yml file.
Docker technology evolves rapidly over the past few years. So far, there has been 3 versions of the Compose file format. Version 3 is the most up-to-date format and is recommended format. To specify version 3, we just put a version column 3 entry at the root of the YAML.
In this file, we define the services that make up our application. For each service, we provide instructions about how to build and run the container. In our application, we have 2 services, Docker App and Redis service. First of all, let's work on the Docker App service. The first instruction we'll write is the build instruction, followed by column and dot. The build instruction defines the path to the Docker file which will be used to build the Docker App image. Because our Docker App Docker file is sitting at the same directory as this Docker Compose YAML file. Here we put dot, which means the current directory. The second instruction we'll write is the port instruction, which defines which ports on the container to expose to the external network. The port instruction is analogous to the -p argument of the Docker run command. Mapping ports are defined in host port column container port format. Here we just type port 5000 column port 5000 to expose container port 5000 to host port 5000.
Next, we need to add a depends on section to express the dependency between the Redis service and the Docker App service. Because our Docker App container is effectively a client of the Redis container, we want to start the Redis container before the Docker App service. Docker Compose will start services in the dependency order defined in the depends on section. Here in the Docker App service, we add a depends on section to let Docker Compose know that Docker App depends on the Redis service, so that Docker Compose will start Redis container before Docker App container. It's very important to ensure that services start up in the right order in a microservice world.
Now, we're done with the Docker App service. Let's move on to the Redis service. The only instruction we need is the image instruction. The image instruction defines which image to run a container from. In this case, we used Redis image 3.2.0. As you see, we can either run a container from an existing image, or we can build an image from a Docker file. all service would either need an image or build instruction. We're done with writing Docker Compose file. You might want to ask why we don't need to define the linking between Docker App Service and Redis. This is because the version 2 Docker Compose format supports Docker Network feature, which allows containers to be discovered by its name automatically. And any service can reach any other service at its service's name, so linking is not required anymore. However, if you're using the version 1 Docker Compose supports, you do need to add container linking here.
Before we use Docker Compose command to bring up all the containers, make sure we have stopped all the running containers in the previous lecture to avoid port conflict. Let me show you how to do this. First, run docker ps command to find the container IDs of all the running container. Then, we run docker stop command and paste all the container IDs to stop the running containers. Now it's time to try out the Docker Compose commands.
To run the app, we simply use the command docker compose up. The up command will build the images for all services defined in the YAML file. Create and start all the containers. We can run docker ps to verify the Docker app container and the Redis container are up running. Let's summarize. We have demonstrated how to automate our Docker workflow with Docker Compose command. Docker Compose is a very handy tool to quickly get Docker environment up and running. It uses YAML files to store the configuration of all the containers, which removes the burden to maintain our scripts for Docker orchestration, such as starting, linking, and stopping our containers. In the next lecture, we'll learn more about Docker Compose workflow. That's it for this lecture. I'll see you later.